Most lawyer presentations start out with, this is not legal advice. Mine's going to start out with, portions of this are going to be R-rated, and if someone runs for the door at some point, I think I've done my job. There's already 10 people walking out. Great start. All right, we're going to start with my clicker. We're going to play a game. What is this? Anybody? Laptop sleeve. Very good. What's inside of it? Anybody? Take a guess. Laptop. Decent guess. Anybody else? Money. That'd be cool. These laptop sleeves are actually kind of a joke in my office because we ordered them, but nobody checked the dimensions. And if your laptop was made in 1987, this is the perfect size for you. If you have a laptop where you also want to carry a desk, or maybe you have small children in need of sleeping bags, we have a few hundred of these if you're interested. But inside is actually a binder. And in the binder is the first manuscript of a book that I'm writing. I'm going to publish this by the end of the year. And on Monday, I'm flying out of town. I got a cabin all by myself where I'm going to dig through the first version of this thing. And we're going to come back to the book later. But the reason that I play that game, and actually Jake kind of proved this point earlier with the football teams, is I just divided the room into 3 groups. There are people in this room who guessed at the laptop sleeve and who guessed what was inside of it. They shouted their answers out loud. There was a second group of people who thought about the answer but never actually said it. And then there's the third group. I actually had to write these words down because I have a name for you. You cold and timid souls. Nobody stood up to leave. Those 3 groups are going to be important. We're going to talk about those in a little bit. They made me submit my slides like 2 weeks in advance. I don't function like this. We're skipping that one. We'll go back. I can make this work. All right. Red button. My name is Adam Williams. I grew up in Erie. I was a hockey player. Mike Jirasevich was sitting here. Used to play with him. I was a decent hockey player. Never led any team in goals, usually led in penalty minutes. I was the enforcer, never much of a rule follower. And like a lot of hockey players in the 80s and 90s, 2000s, I also thought I was a skater. Like the X Games were getting big, so Jenko jeans, chain wallet. I will welcome back either of those trends. And I was a good enough hockey player that I got in some travel teams. And some years we would have our leagues in Pittsburgh, and some years we would have our leagues in Cleveland, a couple years in Buffalo. And one of the last years that I played on a league in Buffalo. And like a lot of hockey players, I was kind of a skater, and there was a skate park nearby the hockey rink. And our coach forbade us from going to the skate park before any of our games. He didn't want us getting injured, because then we'd be down a player, and that would be pretty unfortunate. But I wasn't much of a rule follower. So I convinced my parents to take me to the skate park one time. And I didn't get injured. That's not how the story ends. But I went with my dad, and a couple hours before the game, we paid for, 30 minutes or 60 minutes at a time, and I put my rollerblades on and pads and helmet. It was a huge facility, like big warehouse. And they had ramps and half pipes and rails and all this stuff. And I went out, and at the time I was trying to convince my dad to build me a half pipe in our backyard, like a 6-footer. I'm 6 something. And he said, well, let's go to a skate park first so you can I'm not going to build this thing if you're not actually going to use it. So we go to the skate park, and it's packed, and there's rollerbladers and skateboarders and BMX riders all over this place. And I went out and dropped in on a couple ramps and tried some tricks, and I spent a lot of time watching other people there because it was pretty cool to see up close, like this stuff that I had seen on TV at the X Games, like people in real life doing this stuff. And I never made it to the 6-foot half pipe, so I saved my dad from having to build that. But I got on the 3-footer, and I scared the crap out of myself. Like I would drop in and I'd jump over to the other side, and then I'd drop in and get over and then I'd stop, and it's like, all right, I'm gonna coast around for a little bit and watch these other people. And I remember I got in the car after the hour or whatever it was, and we're getting ready to go to the hockey game, and had my pads off, and I'm getting changed so that my coach didn't know that I went to the skate park before the game. And I'm like, hey, Dad, thanks. That was really cool. I'm really glad I got to do that. It was cool to see all these other people out there and doing this cool stuff. And by the way, I don't know if you noticed, but I didn't fall once. And have your parents ever said something to you that sticks in you like an arrow that you can never pull out? 25, 30 years later, whatever it is now, I said, Dad, thanks so much. I don't know if you noticed, I didn't fall. And he said, we weren't trying very hard. Let's contrast that with Tony Hawk. We're at table 2. If you don't like anything about this talk, blame my team. They've heard this lesson. Tony Hawk is the greatest skateboarder of all time. Can any of you name another skateboarder? Yeah, not really. No, okay, one person can. Great job. There's a documentary out right now about Tony Hawk. It probably came out a couple years ago. It's called Until the Wheels Fall Off. And I think it's streaming on Amazon or HBO, some service that I don't have. Doesn't matter. There's a bootleg version of the first 5 minutes on YouTube, and that's all I need to watch to get the lesson. I think I watched it on a plane flight coming back from somewhere. And the opening scene of this movie is really powerful, and the folks working the cameras will probably appreciate this. It's a giant warehouse. There's 12-foot half pipes. Tony Hawk is in his helmet and his elbow pads and his knee pads, and he grabs his skateboard and he climbs up the ladder to the top of the half pipe. And he takes a big breath. And he drops in and he jumps out of one side of the half pipe and he jumps out the other side and he jumps out the first pipe side and he spins and spins and spins and falls. And he hops back up and he grabs his skateboard and he walks back over to the ladder and he gets to the top of the half pipe and he takes a breath and he drops in and he jumps and he jumps and he jumps and he spins and spins and spins and falls. He does this 11 times. And the first time I showed this to my team, all the moms were watching it and they go, ooh, like every time he fell, it's so powerful. The 11th time he falls, I thought I was gonna have a handheld mic for this. The 11th time he falls, he's laying on the ground, the skateboard is over there, and you just hear him going, fuck, 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 fuck. And all of you who own a business know that feeling, right? But then the video goes slow motion. And the music picks up, and he grabs the skateboard, and he walks back to the top of the half pipe, and he takes a deep breath, and in slow motion, he drops in, and he jumps, and he jumps, and he jumps, and he spins, and he spins, and he spins, and he falls again. This is the best skateboarder ever, falling all over his face. And then his voice comes over, and he says, I'm willing to struggle through the learning process. Even change my approach just to figure out how to do it. Still in slow motion, he falls again. I was willing to get hurt along the way, but I never visualized myself getting hurt. I always approach things like, this is going to work. I'm going to figure this out. That is what makes Tony Hawk, and that is what makes Adam Williams, Adam Williams. I am willing to get hurt. I am willing to suffer physical and emotional and spiritual pain to figure it out. So what I'm going to do today, in the next 20-ish minutes, is I'm going to teach you a new definition of a word, failure. I'm going to give you some examples, and I'm going to give you a little bit of an action item coming out of here, because I think it's important to actually implement something coming out of this. So, a little bit about me. I lost my water. I own a law firm. We have 20 to 25 employees, depending on the day. For the last 3 years, we've been ranked on the Law Firm 500 fastest growing law firms in the country. Keep an eye on the Inc. 5000. We'll be on the regional list next year, national list the year after that, fastest growing companies in the world, or in the country. Beginning of this year, we got certified as a great place to work. There are 4 businesses in Erie, Pennsylvania that have that. Erie Insurance, Logistics Plus, Federal Resources Corporation, and Rust Belt Business Law. That's a good one. We've got clients in 41 states. We'll do about $5 million in revenue this year. And for a single shareholder law firm, that's a shitload of revenue. But here's the problem. You're going to look at that stuff and say, all right, maybe this guy knows what he's talking about. And you're right, I do. But it's not because I figured all that. It's not because I did all of that stuff. It's because I've been through 4 different pay-per-click vendors this year. And all the social media marketers here are salivating. We got Larry now, we're good. I've done multiple webinars this year with fewer than 10 people in attendance, most of whom were already on my team. I did one a couple weeks ago where I get really thirsty, I get a little energetic when I talk. I ran out of coffee, I ran out of water. The only thing I had was a bubbly. Every time I took a sip, I burped. It was really great. In August of 2021, half my employees left. A couple of them coordinated it so that they gave notice the day I left for vacation, and they were gone by the time I got back. Wonder what they're doing now. The company that paved our parking lot in 2022 had to regrade a portion of it. They screwed it up so bad, we couldn't open one of the doors to our office for 13 months. The employees had to go in a different entrance. One of our core values is figure it out. Another one of our core values is take your job seriously, but don't take yourself too seriously. So we've got the law firm. I started it as a side hustle. I was clerking for a judge, and we've turned it into what it is today. In 2016, I helped launch a board game called Socialism, the Game. This was back when presidential elections used to be fun. And the idea of socialism was it was like Monopoly, except the game was over when everybody had the same amount of money at the end. Good joke, not a great financial success. Somewhere in Erie, there's a warehouse full of socialism games if you guys are interested. I also helped start the Big Cheese food truck. A partner and I started that in 2018, so I like to joke that it's not even a joke, it's a good like cocktail conversation starter. In 2018, I spent $25,000 on cheese. And earlier this year, my wife, who's a CPA, we launched a new business to help small businesses and entrepreneurs called Pennywise Tax Strategies, and we're helping small businesses and entrepreneurs reduce their tax bill, put more money in their pocket, instead of sending it to the IRS without getting into trouble. And things like that are the reason that I know what I'm talking about. So I'm going to teach you a new definition of failure. I'm going to teach you this new framework, this new perspective, and you'll be able to recognize things now that you used to think were failure that you can now celebrate as success, or at least a step on the path towards success. You ready for this? None of you have run for the door yet. I gotta try a little harder. But here's why this is important. The most important ingredient for restoring the Rust Belt, the most important factor for creating jobs and improving the economy, it's not what the chamber does, they do great. It's not KIZ tax credits or the CRIZ or opportunity zones or whatever the local government's doing, the county government's doing. None of that matters if we don't change our appetite for risk. If we don't have people willing to fall on their faces in very public ways more frequently than it happens right now, none of that other stuff is going to make any difference. So, today, let's change our attitudes and responses to failure. Let's encourage more of it. So here it is. There's only 3 ways to fail. Anything outside of these 3 ways should be perceived as a success. You fail if you don't try. You fail if you quit, and you fail if you don't learn the lesson. You don't need to write that down because I'm going to say it 18 more times. Let's go back to the laptop sleeves. Who failed at guessing what was inside of here? Was it the people who shouted out answers? Was it the people who thought of an answer but didn't actually say anything? They didn't try, they didn't get into the game? Or was it the people who sat there silently not even playing? You cold and timid souls. So the first way to fail is you don't learn the lesson. This is Tony Hawk. He jumps, he falls, he's the greatest of all time. I get emotional. And this next part, bear with me. I guess I could skip a slide, we'll get there. Well, spoiler alert about where this one's going. Whoop, not there. So I started my law practice as a side hustle, like a lot of my clients, right? They've got a great job, start a business on the side. Eventually, I think it took 6 months, I was making as much from my business as I was from my gig with the county. Although the county benefits were great, I feel like our health insurance basically paid for us to have our first child. And I moved into the office that we're in now in 2016. We're up on 10th Street. And at the time, it was me and a secretary. And she had been a legal secretary for like 37 years, and at the time I had been alive for 34, so I really relied really heavily on her. And we moved into this building, and I think now it's probably, I don't know, 7 or 8 or 9 offices, but at the time it was the 2 of us. My office was on the 2nd floor, and she decided she wanted her office on the 2nd floor. And every time somebody walked in the building, the doorbell would ring, and she'd have to run downstairs in her high heels and see who was there, and it would be the mailman or the UPS man or a client or my mom just stopping in to visit, and then Kathy would have to run all the way back upstairs. And as we were getting ready to move into this building, I left another law firm where I was basically a tenant. I was self-employed. As long as I paid my rent, I could do pretty much whatever I wanted to do. And one of the lawyers came up to me. I literally knew this guy since the day I was born. He was my parents' lawyer. He showed up to the hospital the day I was born. And he pulled me aside as I was moving out of his building, and he said, "Adam, you're going to die on the vine. You are going the way of the dodo." Now, when we have team meetings in our office, we need to coordinate who's going to sit where because there's so many people working there that we don't have enough space for them. It's not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. This isn't me. This is Roosevelt. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again. Because there is no effort without error or shortcoming. But who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither knew victory nor defeat. I kind of wish I wrote that. That's pretty powerful, right? It's not the critic who counts. No news articles are written about the great idea that stayed in someone's head until the day they died. No statues are built for people who thought of a better way of doing things but never actually did it. Standing on the sidelines is failure. If I had more time, I would pull up the Erie News Now article about the opening event last night. You should see the fucking comments on here. The critics, the cold and timid souls, the people who never step into the arena, who have nothing positive to say about Erie, Pennsylvania, who aren't sitting in this room right now. If you don't bother to get into the game, if your role is merely to criticize, you are failing. And Erie has a double whammy here, because we don't have enough people stepping into the arena, and we've also got a surplus of critics. Every time I see Nick Scott, I want to shake his hand, because every time they put like a different concept in an old location, like I hope these guys aren't on social media to hear all the crap that people talk about them. I respect them. I used to work at Quaker Steak. All right, I'm going to go over time. I used to work at Quaker Steak when I was in I think it was college. I was a wing fryer. This is the best thing. Before direct deposit, you got a paycheck in an envelope, and in the envelope, they would put coupons for other Scott Enterprises establishments. Hell yeah. But here's the thing. The key to understanding the problem of not stepping into the arena is to understand why we're doing it. Those of you who had the guess about what was in the laptop sleeve but didn't say it out loud, I know why you didn't say it out loud. You ready? You were afraid of what the person sitting next to you at your table was going to think about you. You were worried about being judged. If you yelled out, who yelled out money in the laptop sleeve? Somebody yelled it out, and then other people laughed at her. I probably laughed. It was a good one. If somebody yelled out, there's probably jelly beans in there, you'd be like, what is wrong with this idiot, right? The people that had the idea but never said it out loud were so afraid of being judged. And here's the thing with being judged, like failure in a business. I'm confident, I don't know all of you. I know many of you. I know the support system that we have around us. If you put your entire life savings into a business, taco truck, and it failed, you probably wouldn't end up homeless. Like, you'd figure something out, right? Maybe you'd have to go and get another job, but you wouldn't lose your home. So you're not worried about being homeless if your business fails. You're worried about what other people are going to say about you. If my Porsche gets repoed, I would be sad. I really love driving it. But even worse, I'd have to hear the rumors at the chamber and the bar association and Facebook about what was so wrong with me and what I did wrong. And that would hurt my feelings. Like, that would make me feel really bad. I really don't want to be judged. And sometimes that still keeps me from taking risks. You guys are mumbling. It's making me nervous. All right. Also, I get that with the laptop sleeve, it was kind of like low risk, low reward, or high risk, low reward. You weren't actually going to get a prize if you got it right, so maybe you don't play. I get that. All right, so the first way to fail, you don't learn the lesson. Second way to fail, you never try. Third way to fail, you give up. Is anybody here from, like, that works with the Niagara or any of those? Like, no? All right, good. Because somebody would have fact-checked me on this. Did you know that this saying on this flag came from the USS Chesapeake? Do you know what happened to the USS Chesapeake? They gave it up! They gave up the ship! But nobody knows that. Why? Because Perry won the war. He's got streets and highways named after him, and the park, and the school, and probably the ice cream. He won the war, but nobody knows that they gave up the freaking ship that they said not to give up that's hanging all over the city. Now you know. You're welcome. This is tough, especially with the failure thing. I have a son who's in 7th grade, and I think if he gets like a 70% in a class, it's like failing. Like, probably wouldn't move on to the next grade. Might be slightly lower than that. So we're taught this from a young age, that 70% is less than adequate. If I get it right 70% of the time in my business, I am killing it, right? I'd be fine with 51%. But because of that rate of perceived high failure, a lot of people want to mail it in. So I got a call about a year ago from a business owner. This was not a legal client. She wanted help with her business because she saw some of the cool stuff that we were doing. She called me. She said, hey, I don't think I want to do this anymore. So we talked through it. And she said, if you can help me, I'm working 100 hours a week. I'm making decent money. I don't see my husband. If you can help me, I won't close my business. And she's not here. She actually lived in Canada. And I said, OK, I can help with that. You just have to actually implement what I tell you to implement. She said, that won't be a problem. I said, how do I know you're really committed, right? Like, you write me a big check to work with you, but you make money. You'll always make more. Like, you don't need this money. She goes, well, I'm going to have a baby in 10 weeks. Working 100 hours a week. Never seen her husband. So she's like, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. It's really, really, really hard. Except this business was founded by her father. They did like safety consulting in Canada, which is apparently a thing there. Father's business, she took it over. There was like a legacy here. There was a great reputation for the work that they did. They were really good at what they did. So she worked with me. We implemented some changes to our policies. We recruited like freaking crazy. We did a bunch of onboarding. Got to the point that she had the baby, ended up being 12 weeks later. She got 30 days of maternity leave for her business. She got freedom from her business for 30 days. How many of you can do that in your business right now? How many of you can leave your business for 30 days? How many of you started your business to have some sort of freedom? Nobody? All right, liars. You did it. You did it because you thought you were going to be free. You did it because you thought you were going to make more money, but that wasn't actually the case. Tanya ended up being able to take 30 days off. She spent the next 60 days working only part-time in the business. I take a lot of pride in that because she was ready to quit. Am I over on time, Jordan? All right, I'll land the plane. A few things that we need to celebrate and encourage. I'm going to fly through this. Someone starting a business, celebrate it. Don't ask them for free shit. Give them your money. That's what they are there to do. When you see the struggling business owner who's probably having a bad day, who's taking it out on employees or maybe customers, just stop them and say, hey, you're doing something that so few people are willing to do. Keep it up. You see somebody buying or selling a business. You see somebody trying new tactics, like launching a book. Support it. Risk without being reckless. Hire experts, hire coaches, work with mentors. Don't work with a mentor who hit a home run on the first try. Work with the mentor who struck out 1,000 times before hitting the home run. Because who do you think actually knows what they're talking about and who's full of shit? You know, that's rhetorical. Don't answer that. We're done playing games. I won't judge you, you cold and timid souls. All right, so here's what I want to do. That Tony Hawk story, my skate park story, the arrow that my dad shot into my chest that's stuck here 25 years later, I learned a lot from my parents. Like, they own their own business for 30 years. I had a leg up, honestly, when I started my business. I had an unfair advantage. Grateful for that. I want my kids to have an even more unfair advantage. I've exceeded what my parents ever did with their business. I've done better than they have. I took their lessons. I learned my own. I hired my own coaches and experts and mentors. And now I'm putting it together in a book. I wanted to document these lessons for my kids, and I know that I can help other entrepreneurs in the process. So I'm going to launch the book later this year. I don't even have a title. I'm pretty sure I'm going to call it Everything Your Kids Wish You Knew About Running a Business, but that's still up in the air. I'm setting up a wait list now, so if you go to rustbeltlegal.com/homecoming or scan the QR code, drop your email in, you'll get on our wait list. We're going to do a big announcement with this. I'm going to do some early bird freebies for everybody that opts in that wants to hear more of my stories. Maybe you'll get a free laptop bag. I don't know. But keep an eye out on my social media, on the firm's social media. Opt in at our page here, because I think that there's a lot more that Erie needs to hear about this. I hope you all buy a copy of this book for everyone in your network and your families. And I thank you for your time and for helping me celebrate my failures.